Okay, so how are you guys doing today? Anything new this week, or?
So I've been busy with the registration and visa interviews and stuff for this week.
Okay.
Because of the conference, I need to be in the US in April. That's all.
All right. Anything,
Was
Jesse?
that something about a conference?
What was that?
Was that something about a conference that Devansh said?
Oh, what was? Hey, Ankit, what was the thing about the conference? Oh, about the conference you showed last week?
Yes, I was people accepted at a conference and I have to be at UT Dallas in April. That's why I was busy with the visa interviews and stuff this week.
Oh, good. Yeah, no, that's good. Yeah.
I'm looking at my notes from last week, and it's like, wow, it's been a week since then. So yeah, a lot is. Last week was a very big week for me. Of just finishing stuff. I finished my last grad school application of the season. So that was big, and then at my attempt at the first in paper last week was there. The CSV abstract was accepted, and I don't think we've heard anything from that besides that. And also, we're waiting for the CI collective intelligence one, right? Like those are all kind of on hold for now.
Yeah. So, the CSV. I mean, I just had to confirm our attendance to the conference, or we'll figure it out. They just wanted to know if we were going to present.
Okay.
I don't know. I don't know if people have noticed, but they're canceling a lot of conferences because of coronavirus. So I don't know. Yeah, I don't know how these things are going to work this year. Might be.
That was going to be my next comment.
Oh yeah, that'd be our time to shine, like online here in our online sessions, because I was watching.
Yeah.
Well, no, I was watching a video from the American Physical Society. Someone gave a keynote on, like, they sat in a at a computer and they had like a background. It was like a tropical background, and they were giving a talk. And then, I mean, that's the way they're kind of filling in the gaps. So, I mean, that might be in our future. We'll see. Hopefully not, but you never know. So, yeah. Let's see. So, first thing I wanted to mention was that, let me see if I can share my screen here.
The only other thing I was going to add was just we don't have to go into this much now, but definitely, because I'm in New York State, and not in New York City, but just there's been everything around me is being affected by coronavirus scare or legitimate panic, but it's really taking quite a storm. So it's kind of cool that we are online and distributed as it is, but it's like affecting. Like I'm getting stuff from my work about, well, you can work remotely or do this, and many of the conferences and things that I'm involved in are getting. That's what I was going to ask about the conference that Devansh was mentioned, like, are they offering any online components, because it's affecting like a lot of stuff. So, yeah. That's all.
Okay. So, any news from you, Ankit?
No, I just got the mail about this this research gate link that you gave.
Yeah.
Of the preprint, and also I almost finished my part in this presentation that you shared. So I edited the presentation and asked you to have a look.
Okay. Yeah. So we'll go over that. Yeah, we'll go over that in a bit here. So the first thing I wanted to talk about was this. This is the Bradenberg vehicles, this developmental neurosimulation. Now it's live on ResearchGate, and it has a DOI on it here that you can assign in ResearchGate. And then So it's on ResearchGate if you don't know, and I know that Jesse knows, and Ankit just joined. But it's sort of a social media platform for papers. So you can put papers up, and you get reads. So we've already got 12 reads, and let's see details of that. And Jesse, I don't know, when I brought your name up, it didn't show your profile. I don't know if you'll have to claim the paper or something, but so Michael Levin read the paper.
I haven't updated my profile in a long time.
Okay. So Michael Levin.
Okay, I will do that.
Okay. He read this. This guy's a pretty big name in developmental biology, and he's interested in computer science. So he read the paper. And there are probably obviously there are other reads, but they don't really show up on here. It's a selective thing sometimes. So I had up yesterday. The thing about the archive submission is that it's been on hold for like a week. And sometimes they do that to figure out what the classification should be. And I sent them an email and they said, well, we're still working on it. So I don't know. It's like their moderation system. Sometimes it's all volunteer. So I don't know. Maybe I don't know. So we'll figure it out. Hopefully it'll be out on the archive as well. But I wanted to put it up here because, that's a lot. It's excessive to be in moderation for a week. It's not like. But anyways, so that's the paper. So it's up and people are reading it, which is the important part. And feel free to promote it on social media. I haven't actually had a chance to do that yet, but I'll do that today. And then we'll see where, if people read it even more. So, another thing I wanted to point out, and this is for Jesse, and I forgot about this. This is something that I remember from when I was kind of in your position that you are right now. So it's a bit old. It's actually in the web archive here. And this is a Kli Theory Lab. So, coming up. Here it is. Okay, so this is the Wayback Machine, which archives things that are no longer live. And you can go find web pages from like the early 2000s, mid 2000s, and so forth. And you get these cached versions of it. And so this is the Kli Theory Lab, and this was up from like 2001 to like 2011, I think. And it was put together by the Konrad Lorenz Institute, which is a research institute in Germany, and they were interested in developing what they call the theory tool for like ethology and cognitive science. So you can see that this is like kind of an older design, of course, because it was created in 2001, where they have like keywords, they have authors, and then they have these areas of interest. So it ranges from artificial life to artificial intelligence, cognitive science, cultural evolution, philosophy of science, and so forth. And so each of these stubs have information in them. In Wayback Machine, you can click on them and they'll go through largely to some source. So this is the stub. So philosophy of biology, and they have introduction, they have the major issues. So they have kind of gone through the literature and kind of pulled out these major issues. They give you a little bit of a introduction here. And then they have a listing of books. And this is all very like subjective. Like they have a literature review that they did, and it just gives you like reviews of the books, anthologies, and monographs. The journals, they call it periodicals, but it's journals in the field, and a society. They don't have a paper sometimes they have like curated papers in something like this. I remember when I was an undergrad, this is why I bring it up, I created an annotated bibliography for a topic, that I don't work on anymore. And it ended up putting it on the web as sort of like a resource, and it was actually pretty popular. But in that case, it had like a lot of academic papers where we'd put like a topic stub like this, and then have a bunch of papers, and then have some description of the paper. So that's another way to do it. That's basically what this is for the book. So this is what they call an annotated bibliography. And so the idea, Jesse, is that this is how they've structured their stubs on this. And the reason I bring this up is because it reminds me of the thing you're trying to do, where you're putting
it does. Might be an example of frontier map stuff. Yeah, I will look at that. Thank you.
Okay, yeah. So let me put the link in the chat, and like I said, it's no longer live, so it's going to be difficult to navigate, but I think you get the idea. And then this is the paper here. People will want to see the final version, or the version that's on ResearchGate. Okay, so that's those two things. Now, the next order of business is the what do we want to do here? Okay, why don't we go to Ankit's recordings? So this morning he sent me a message in Slack. He created the recordings of his Brainberg vehicles, of demos for each one. So this is shared with me, BV platform recordings. So he's got cropped GIFs and cropped MP4s. So let's check out each folder, see if they're in there. They should be.
Yeah. I know it's taking time.
Yeah. Okay. So we've got moving 2B, moving 3A, rest 2A, rest 2B, moving 2A, rest 3A. So we have 3A, 2B, and 2A. Okay. And so this is the cropped GIFs, and this is of course the same.
Yeah, pretty easy to play that. Yeah.
2A, 2B, and 3A. Yeah. And so these are the same things but in GIF format. See if I can open one without crashing my computer.
Sure.
Well, and yeah, in this it'll work, but it seems to be having trouble this morning. But I don't know if it's animated for her. Oh, there it is. Good. Perfect.
So as you said, to like crop the thing and just bring that the environment only into the recording, so cropped and trimmed.
Okay. Yeah, that looks good. I mean, yeah, it's good. I'll put that into the
into the
well, Z.
Nice.
So that's good. Yeah, we've got the cropped GIFs. We've got the cropped MP4s, so that's good. And I'll work on those after the meeting. I'll put those up on the web, on the Figshare repository.
Yeah.
So I'll synchronize all of that. Okay, so Z, I just wanted to bring your attention to I took the paper and I submitted it to archive, but as I told you in the email, it's taking them a long time to moderate it. So I put it up on ResearchGate, and I don't know if you've used ResearchGate, but this is the paper. So we have a stub on ResearchGate, and I don't know if I have to put it back in the chat or if you can see the link. But I know that you're not on ResearchGate, Z, so I think I may have sent you an invitation to join. If you want to claim this paper, you can. You have to join in and create an account, and you can claim the paper, I think. But this gives you, now we have a DOI for it, so it's a permanent mark here. We have people who've already read it. 14 people have read it already. I just put this up yesterday, so that's pretty good. And then, you get readership stats and everything. So that's something that if you're, check it out and see if you can join and claim the paper. Okay, so that's good. So next thing I wanted to move to was the something we haven't talked about in a while, and that is the fQXi essay. And so this is actually, I took this from GitHub, was where we were working on it before, and I actually created a Google Doc for it. So I'm kind of like getting it in shape. The deadline is in 2 weeks, I believe, or maybe even a week and a half. It's the 16th, so it's actually coming up here pretty quickly. So this needs to be finished off this coming week. I think maybe we'll switch over to Google Docs at this point.
It's easy to edit and comment here.
Yeah. So why don't I give everyone the link? And this should be shared. If it isn't, you can request access. So this is this one. And this is the essay, the Google Docs version. So why don't we go over it quickly? So this is the working title. Again, we can change this if we want. I kind of recycled this part of the title and this part of the title later. So we don't want to change it too much, but we can change some of the, wording or whatever. So I put Ankit and Jesse on as co-authors. And I mean, even if you just want to, Ankit, if you just want to go over and make corrections or whatever, that's great. But we have the introduction, so we have this quote, and it's centered now, and then some description of the quote, and then we go through, and we're calling them UN3. So remember, this is about undecidability, uncomputability, and I can't remember what the third thing is, but I think I defined it in here.
Unpredictability?
Yeah, unpredictability, right. Undecidability. So that's right here. And then this, which we refer to as the UN3 of unruly problems. I would have put unsquared 3, but I thought about it. People do that a lot stylistically. But that would mean it would be like more than 3 because it's the power of 3, so it's not. I don't know. Anyways, I thought that people in the physics and mathematics group would maybe, point that out. But so talk about unruly problems. So basically, what I did when I brought this into the doc was to flesh out a lot of the text, the paragraphs, so that they make sense and that they kind of fit together. So there are a lot of establishing sentences here, and then kind of goes through some motivation of the essay and so forth. Then there's what makes a problem hard to represent. So there are 3 things: difficult to quantify, difficult to symbolize and represent, and unphysical problems for which there's no physical analog. And that heading might need to be changed, but I'll change that later. And then in this section, Jesse and I have been adding things in. I bring up Newell and Simon's physical symbol systems hypothesis, maybe gratuitously, but it gives it has some relevance to what we're talking about in terms of symbolization or creating symbols from a system. And there's a link to metaphors, which is also important in both symbolization and abstraction and representation. Let me see if I can actually make this note here. So I just want to make that note. And then Jesse mentions Julian Jaynes, who's a person in, I think, philosophy of science, and he talks about theories being metaphors between model and data. And so talk about that for some length of time. And then I brought up wicked problems, which are problems that if you look at like a planned economy or a city, that's what they've called in the past a wicked problem, which is that's hard to make predictions about the component. It's hard to find all the components of the system that contribute to some change. They behave, things behave collectively, and they, create like traffic jams or, urban centers that kind of spring up from a bunch of settlements, and it creates the structure that if you're like interested in planning an economy or a city, it's hard to really know like what the outcome is going to be. And so a lot of people, especially in like urban planning back in the 20th century, they created models for trying to sort of predict urban planning. And of course, you can't do it with a conventional statistical model because there are too many parameters in it. And so they used, early simulations like cellular automata. If you know SimCity, you know that they've used, that's based on the work of Jay Forrester and people like that, where they, tried to build models of cities and very complex systems. However, it's always like there's always a bit of unpredictability there. It's never really clear what's going to happen. And those models have been, somewhat useful, but they're not particularly effective at predicting a lot of what happens in those systems. So this is an older term, I guess. It's maybe an obscure term, but they're called wicked problems, and it's just because they're large problems. They have a lot of, feedback and unclear what, causality is unclear and things like that. So the term wicked just simply means that it's very hard to predict or solve. And, this has not been studied a lot. There are very few papers on this topic thinking about it in this way. And I know machine learning people like to think that they can, tackle any problem with machine learning. But I haven't seen anyone try a wicked problem in machine learning, really. I've seen a lot of, you'll have a lot of parameters, but it doesn't necessarily translate to a wicked problem or solving one. So it's, I don't know, maybe there's something more to be said there, but I don't know if it would be in this essay. There are a couple things I have in my mind, but I'm not going to say them right now. I'll think about it. Then there's no unphysical problems. So again, like this is more about representation. So let me see. Let me add this in here. All right. And so this is the idea that if you have a system like the brain or like, an economy or an organism moving around in its environment, you might use a physical analog like a jet engine or a computer or velocity to describe it. And so the problem, of course, with that is not all systems are suitable for that analysis. And it's, it might be a problem in a lot of systems that aren't really that physical. And so that's what this section is about. And, I've tried to really make this fit together, and I hope it does. So I encourage Jesse and Ankit to read through it and say where it doesn't really make sense or fit together well. That's a problem with these essays. You put things in and you write you try to build an argument. So it's not like a scientific paper where it has like discrete parts like methods and, results. And it really is like, a narrative, and it needs to be like, makes sense to people, I guess.
Mhm.
So then this part actually is interesting because, and I know Jesse attends the Monday morning meetings, but this one is about something that was presented in there a couple weeks ago. So I use an example from, and you say why? That seems like a pretty obscure thing, and the answer is because we had actually a presentation on this about how people have observed diatoms for about 250 years, maybe under a microscope, and they've in that time they've come up with a history of diverse metaphors for the movement. Like you observe this thing under a microscope and you don't really understand why it's moving the way it is, and you try to explain why that is. And so they've used probably about 20 different metaphors to try to build a model, perhaps explain why it's doing what it's doing. And so I cite this little, it's actually a book chapter that's not been published, but I basically go into a little bit of discussion on that. So for diatoms, which are these little microorganisms, they have a gliding, they live in a colony of filaments, and the filaments move around like an accordion, and they glide through the water column. And they don't seem to have they have maybe some muscle filaments or actin filaments even that can generate force, but it's always been a mystery as to how they actually move. And so people have, made a huge number of, potential explanations for this. So these include jet engines, rowing ships, bubble-driven movement, treadmilling, compressed air-driven movement. And it needs to be added in there. And explosive propulsion. So, people have looked at these things and they've thought about what they see in the physical world, and then they would, or in the cultural world or in the natural world, and then they'd give a description of what that is and use that as an analogy. Now, of course, some of these are more plausible than others, but that's kind of the point. The diverse interpretation is evidence that even something that is straightforwardly physical, with diatom motility, is actually quite hard to symbolize, meaning to put it into a system of symbols that we can, that are reasonable. So that's the argument. And then there are some open questions which are actually down here, but I figured I'd put them here. These maybe need to be edited a little bit more for clarity. But that's, again, something that if you guys have ideas about. And then, is there a paradigm for measurement and computation, actually? Or no, is a new paradigm, I guess is what I want. And then, so this is introducing sort of a new paradigm for measurement and computation. And this is a little bit more stream of consciousness, but it's just basically things that, kind of shots in the dark that you might want to take to, maybe how to analyze these sorts of systems. And the important thing in here to mention is that I'm going to be creating 3 diagrams for these. And then, we'll kind of, I'll maybe open source the diagrams and you guys can comment on them. They're just really simple diagrams to describe I keep getting messages from Slack. I don't want that. So anyways, the diagrams, I'll create them and then we can look at them later and discuss. So that there's a lot of stuff here, and it's, like I said, it's very stream of consciousness. I actually mentioned Douglas Hofstadter's strange loop in here. It's, I just kind of go through and I've numbered the points here. I don't know why I indented it, but anyways, that's the outline. And again, this is a little bit less organized. So again, that's another place you might want to focus your efforts and just making sure that it makes sense. And then the conclusions. So then we're up to page 5 here. I don't know how long these essays should be. I think in the past I've seen people write like 8 to 10 pages, and that's, pretty maybe standard. It's like the length of a conference paper. In the past, I've written papers like 5 or 6 page things that are probably sufficient for this, but I think we're at a good length here. Maybe another page with the figures. So we're getting like conclusions. This is where I kind of mentioned the title, so I don't want to change it too much, but returning to the title question of whether a variety of complex problems are un-3 due to a lack of structure, insufficient approaches to hidden structure, the answer is clear. An enhanced ability to identify and characterize such systems allows us to approximate a solution to this type of problem. This section, I don't know if this is clear enough. I was working on it yesterday, and I spent like a while thinking about it, and I still don't think it's right. But I mean, I just want to make sure that it makes makes really good sense. And then this is just we've laid out the reasons, and then there may be opportunity for a potential new paradigm for taming the unruliness of un-3 problem domains. So that'll be that. And then there are the references, which are currently numbered. And again, if you have references to suggest, maybe put them at the end, and then put the name and year in the paper, in the main body of the text, so I can go back and like renumber them. What else do I want to mention? Oh, I thought this was interesting. I found a reference here. I talk about quantitative structure, and I talk about gray goose, which is the complete lack of structure. So I actually approach this from two perspectives. One is the gray goose citation, which was something that was mentioned in a book on nanotechnology years ago. It was by K. Eric Drexler, and it's this book, Nanosystems, Molecular Machinery, Manufacturing, and Computation. If you notice the date, it's 1992, which was a long time ago. Nanosystems weren't even really, people weren't working on them much yet. If you know anything about nanotechnology, Richard Feynman wrote a paper in 1959 called Plenty of Room at the Bottom, where he basically makes a very gutsy prediction at that time. That is that you have the opportunity to work on nanosystems, which are like the lowest scale of sort of matter, which is, well, not the lowest, but one of the lowest scales of like structured matter, nanometers. And so this was the whole argument that, you could build a whole economy on this, or a whole field of study. And so since that time, people have started to work on it. 1992, though, was still kind of in its infancy. So this book, and it's probably in some library somewhere, if you can find it, it's really detailed, but it's not really based on any real systems. And so, it's actually kind of interesting, some of the stuff that it proposes in there. This idea of gray goo being like where, you have matter that's unorganized, completely unorganized. And so, what does that look like? As opposed to like the organization that we expect out of life or like physics. And so there's another thing I also bring up, which is Stuart Kauffman. He came up with this experiment called the Noah's Vessel experiment in one of his books. Stuart Kauffman's a complexity person. And he talks about if you took all the cells on the planet, all the living things, and you put them in a blender, and you blended them together so you could break up the cell walls. They call it lysing cells. But if you lyse all the cells and you just have like the biochemistry inside the cell and it's all kind of mixed in, the question is, could you evolve like highly structured organisms or highly structured colonies of things? And so Kauffman is in those kind of arguments, he's suggesting that you can, but it's not clear. So his argument is kind of like the gray goose argument in nanotechnology, but in life. I can't do two. See, there are all these like little typos I have to correct. Anyways, so that's another part there. And so there probably a lot of things that we can add in, like little anecdotes like that. or little examples. I think the problem here, one of the problems of this paper maybe, is that it's not like there are not enough examples. And so, like here, I think maybe a wicked problem might add in that sort of thing. So we can maybe put some actual, like, real examples in the paper, well, a couple more anyways, that will sort of clarify some of the stuff. Because people, they read it and it's very abstract. I've done this a lot, where it's a very abstract topic and you just kind of use words and figures, but it's really hard to get a grip on like what it actually is. If you use examples, like a lot of there are thought experiments that people have done, philosophical statements, things like that are actually, those become quite useful. And so that's the essay. Again, we're at about 6.5 pages with references, so we have maybe a little bit more room to go before it's considered too long. I think it's probably fine, though. I don't think we're running up against any sort of limitations on space. So Jesse and Ankit and anyone else is actually welcome to work on this if you want to add any comments. It's open until probably, well, it's due the 16th, so probably maybe the 14th or so. So then we, let's see, okay, there's the last bit of business here. And this is the thing I think everyone's been waiting for, is the OHBMX presentation. We've got something in here. So we've got the so I promised to create a presentation slide deck. And this is, okay.
Yeah, I told you about the same thing. Like, I have put in my part already, so I was thinking, like, other people will add their platforms and then information on subsequent slides.
Okay. So why don't I put the link into the chat? So this is for...
Is our abstract accepted in this conference thing?
Well, I haven't gotten a formal notification, but they usually do. So I mean, we can do it. I don't think it's going to be rejected, but we could conceivably do it anyways on Twitter. It wouldn't be like a big of a deal. But I mean, I'm pretty sure we'll get it. I just haven't heard
crashing
yet.
The party.
What was that?
Yeah, crashing the party.
Yeah, I know. It's like, well, here you go. Here's what we think, and there you go.
No, yeah.
So yeah, this is the slide deck for the, and so Ankit has put in some slides. Now we're gonna have to make this a single image. So I think this is a good amount of information to do that.
And then I basically, you told me to like give details of my platform, so I have added the basic information about the platform and the stimulus and everything, and thereafter the recordings, 6 recordings that I have.
Yeah. So we have this. I mean, yeah, we'll probably use some of it. Like I don't know how we'll use it exactly, but. I mean, the thing is, you can make like I can make a big canvas for the image, and then like save it, and then we'll have so we'll have like maybe a really big image that and then we'll make it. We won't size it, but we'll kind of put it in the. Well, like, we can make like a huge, almost like a poster, and then, attach the image. I don't know what the limitations for the image size are on Twitter, but if it's an animated GIF, I think we can make all these, just make a poster almost, and attach it to the tweet. Even something like that might work. But I'm not really sure, like, how this is going to look. I'll think about it. Looking at it.
So, like,
I was thinking... Oh,
Go ahead, someone.
Okay, so like I wrote the stuff about like my platform, and then you guys can change according to the like limitations of words and everything. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
so,
So yeah, the tweet will just like take the highlights of these slides, and just I mean, I guess 240 characters is not much, but it's something that we can boil a lot of this down into. So
yeah.
keep in mind we're just kind of making this as a sort of a conduit to the paper. It doesn't have to be like a 15-minute presentation. Although I do like, I'm looking at these animations here, and they're astoundingly beautiful. Like, I'd like to be able to do something, like, definitely, like, create, I don't know if I can create GIFs from GIFs, animated GIFs from animated GIFs. I think so.
Basically, like I think what we should do is it's like we have a constraint on space, so we can like put these things at one place and then record the screens. So that
Oh,
should
yeah, I
be.
can do that.
Also, like this is what because I've had some different thoughts about this. Like the gifts are very good, and I was thinking one maybe we could have a shared Google document to just sort of plan out the tweets. But also, I was thinking, like I guess we have. Is it something like we have like 6 tweets or something like that are spread out over a couple of minutes? They're like the main tweets. How does that work again?
Yeah, so it's like, if I start off, I get like, I think about 12 minutes. And, you want to leave time for questions. You'll have like 6 tweets. So you'll schedule it maybe one tweet every 2 minutes. So you start off with an introduction, and then you tweet that, and then you wait 2 minutes, and you time it, and then you put your next one out, and then you wait.
Well, I was thinking like.
Yeah, I think the doc idea is good.
Yeah, I mean it's synchronous in the sense that it's like you're posting tweets every 2 minutes, but it's asynchronous in the sense that people can download, say, like the image and look at it later, or look at it. You want to give them some time to interact with it a bit, like to look at it, read it, maybe get the image, save it. But it's also asynchronous because as soon as it's up there, then people can like spend.
Oh, here's an animated version of it too.
Yeah, they can just kind of like revisit the thread and do whatever they want with it. So it's not like, so it's like there's timing in real time when it's presented.
Yeah, and then you can maybe add some other things under, because I feel like that would be, if not easier, but also more functional on Twitter to than like trying to have a fully big animated poster or something like that. I don't know if that's what you're going for, but that's just what came to mind.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, we could. So what we could do, I think I know what you mean. So like for the official presentation, it would be you'd have like 5 slides, and then you'd put those in a thread, and then you could actually like have things linked to that thread. Like you could retweet the thread, and then say this is more information about this, and tag like the conference.
Yeah.
So when people look up this thread, they'll see like their other things going on. But I think officially you're supposed to have like 5 tweets in 12 minutes. But it's again, people are going to ask questions. Hopefully people are going to like contact you offline or online or whatever. And it's so it's not just limited to that. Ultimately, you do have other and hopefully people have a conversation around it. That's the hope.
Yeah. So like I have put in my part, then other like this Z and Stefan may put their part, and then we can like shorten it to like have these things, all things in 5 slides or something like that.
Yeah. So I mean, well, we'll think about what it is. Oh, is that?
is there because I see these are slides, I don't know if these are just one person slides or this is a group shared slide thing.
It's a group share slide.
Okay, then I guess we can
After
plan
this,
out the slides
someone
there.
else, yeah, exactly.
Well, yeah, this is just Ankit's contribution. So, like, anyone else can put slides in here. Just label them for your, if Z, for example, wants to add slides in, put in Z slides. Although, I mean, probably figure out whose they are. I mean, if they're in order, So, like, Z would have Z's platform, and then maybe add in, like, some text, maybe one slide of text or two, and then maybe some images. And then we can do it that way, and I can create something, or we can talk about it more. So we have another week to,
But
next
are
week.
those the final tweets that will be up, or will it be separate? Will the tweet composition be separate?
Well, we want to compose the tweets beforehand, definitely. Like, these are just slides, and I mean, this text has to be boiled down to 240 characters for that topic, and maybe like a little bit in the introduction. But I mean, this is good. I can get some stuff on this, and then if we want to add in, like, if we want to do like subtweets, we can do that later. Separate from the conference. If like,
okay, so the first 5 slides are like the tweets are what they would be. Is that? I'm sorry, I haven't looked this yet.
These slides, these are just what Ankit sent me in terms of a description of his project. This would have to be condensed to one slide or one tweet.
So, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So my plan was to, like, I have put in my part, like Ankit's part, and thereafter anyone can, like, it's Ankit's parts, and thereafter I have my stuff. Then if Z wants to add things, then he has Z's part, and then he can add his things, and we can, like, later on we can take things from this place and like have things in the final presentation that we have.
Yeah. Yeah. And so again, yeah, I mean, I think probably to compose an optimal tweet, I think more information is better than less, because we can actually so next week I'll try to draft some tweets. So it's like I'm going to create 240 character paragraphs basically, and we're going to put them up and go through them. And that'll be something that we can just kind of think about, like how to make, because there's an art to making this optimal. You don't want to use a lot of, you only have 240 characters, so it's hard to really describe what's going on. But we want to make it like just give them a taste, and then we'll just go over the descriptions, make sure they're good, they're the best they could be, and then we'll put them up. Yeah. So yeah, if you want to add your slides in there, add them in. I really like these animations. I'll think about how to like incorporate that into another GIF. Maybe like a larger GIF with those GIFs in it, and like maybe like put them on a canvas that's pretty big, and then just kind of show it on the screen, and then record that. Something like that, where it can be, we can see the animation, like if you see this panel from slide 6 to 11, that's what I'm looking at on my screen. There are all these different things going on, and it's a little small at this resolution, but if they're bumped up a little bit more, maybe put into 2 columns, then you can see you would see the contrast between the different vehicle types. So like, that would be the idea of like, is the stimulus moving, and then what happens when you have different vehicle types. And then that's actually very eye-catching in terms of an image, is to have those animations against one another running. So people can see, because like people are turned on, I think, by like when you see these kind of patterns, emergent patterns There's something that happens in the brain. It's like, oh, it's eye-catching. Even if they don't know what's going on underneath the hood, it's like that catches people's attention. So, yeah, I think that's good. And again, like, so, I mean, I'll try to figure out how to do an animation. Well, we can have static images. Those may be better. Yeah, I think that'll work. So that's the presentation. Any other questions or comments anyone wants to make?
So we would get this confirmation by archive after some days, right?
Yeah, it wasn't clear to me when they're going to make the announcements for acceptance and the time. I think they're probably still working on the schedule. I think they try to be inclusive, though. I think if it's like a reasonable topic, they try to accommodate people. But I think they're doing the scheduling. And the scheduling, I think, is going to be on like a time like in the U.S. That's optimal, because they do schedule like groups around the world. So like when it's nighttime here, it's daytime somewhere else, and so those people would go, and they actually ask you when do you prefer to do this, evening, morning, or afternoon, and they try to fit you in according to your time zone. It'd be my time zone. So if you're in the U.S., it's going to be whenever it'll be accessible to you in real time. Maybe India, it'll be a bit late, but we'll see. But it doesn't matter, because we're on I'm just like posting pre-written stuff, and it's just going to be like presented, and then people will ask questions. And if I find that someone wants to ask a question, I think one of you may be better suited to answer, I will forward it to you. Last year I didn't really have too many questions. I had a couple, but I mean it's a nice resource to have too, like I said, for subtweeting or for like just having it as a summary of the project. And then I don't know about the limitations for images. I think there might be some size limitations, so the animation may or may not work well. We'll see what the size limitations are, but I think that should be okay. And then that should work. I think, okay, so next week is, I think, what is next Saturday, the 14th or something like that?
Yeah, it's 14.
Okay, so this essay here, the unruly problems, this is due the 16th. So by then, like next week, why don't we just plan to go over this again really quickly and just like make sure that it's all set, and then it'll be submitted to the fQXi site. There's a site where they already have a lot of essays. If you go to fqxi.org, maybe I'll put the link in the chat here.
Yeah, I've seen the previous essays that.
But they have, like, now if you go into the essays and you go to this year's essay, they have a bunch of submitted essays. So if you want to look through those, I was looking the other day. They're really interesting. A lot of people have thought really hard about this. It's quite competitive. I mean, there are a lot of people with different ideas about this. And, some of them have thought about it for years. Some of them are, kind of like synthesizing something. But it's, when, like, I think it was last year or the year before, I got a lot of comments on the essay. Like, people will comment, they'll look through it, and they'll say, oh, yeah, this is great. I mean, they don't force you to edit it, but it's like, they give you some feedback on it, which is sometimes very interesting, because they think about things very differently than you or I, because they're, thinking about other problems. And so it's quite interesting people come up with. So that'll be like, we'll recap that, then we'll work on this more seriously. And then, of course, this is due the next week as well. So we'll have, by next week, I will have 240 character drafts for each slide, for each tweet. And then we'll just kind of like go through and make sure that they make sense, but also make sure that they're 240 characters. because you can't go over on Twitter. They don't allow it. Plus, it's not like we don't want to put in these images. We don't want to put a lot of text. We want to make it so that it's pretty clean, but it's like something people can download. So, and,
So,
okay. Well, anything else we need to focus on? I can't remember if there's anything else coming up. The CSV conference for Jesse.
What's that?
Oh, the CSV conference. So that's something that that's in May, and then we need to work on slides for that. And we talked about that last week. So
Yes.
I mean, that's something we need to start thinking about, like how to present it. Frontier maps, and then I don't know. Yeah, we might just kind of go through some of the stuff that, like maybe that Kli Theory Lab would make a good like precursor and say people have done this type of thing before, but it's not really the same thing. But this is how they've kind of approached it from thinking about a big topic, getting stubs, and it's a diversity of topics where you're trying to teach people about the field, or you're trying to give them a little primer. I think that's really kind of what you're doing with knowledge maps, correct?
Yeah. And I was gonna say, should we have where should we have our discussion about that? I don't know if that's the best thing in Slack or Google document about that, because I'm thinking about that too. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely on Slack. I could create a channel for it, but I mean, we can also chat. I think maybe a channel would be more effective because it's out in the open. I don't know. I think out in the open.
And keep it all in one spot would be helpful.
Yeah.
That's good. I was about to say that I have to go to another meeting, but the meeting just got canceled, so that's fine. I have a few more minutes to say something. I also wanted to, we can still talk about the CSV stuff now or later in the Slack channel. And I also was going to mention Open Data Day, which is today, but I don't know if there's going to be much to do with that here. I did like the ideas for the DevoWorm group, but I just wanted to mention that because I didn't know if there was more on that here.
Yeah, so why don't I go over that really quickly if people have time. If you don't, you can leave, but I'm just going to put in a link here. So I don't know how many of you are familiar with Open Data Day. It's something that's been going on for about 10 years, and I mentioned it in Monday's group. And it's in this blog post, and I'm going to bring it up. So I've hosted an Open Data Day for a couple years, and it's this event where it's distributed across many locations on Earth. Different organizations host them, and it's about like open data. It's about sharing data or coming up with ways to like enhance data, like different data structures, or like cleaning data. It has something. It's always something to do with data. It's basically the idea is to get people involved in open data in some way. And so there are a lot of ways people can contribute. People run hackathons. People have run asynchronous events. I'm running this event here through DevoWorm this year. So this is the Open Data Day 2020 blog post. And this is being run through the DevoWorm group. And so sponsored by our organization, but that's, our activities start today, and so this was like Wednesday or Thursday, and will continue over the course of the next year. So this is going to be something that starts now and continues on. So we're looking for people from diverse backgrounds to do some of these things that we mentioned for the DevoWorm group. And our activities include constructing pseudo data sets for theory building and modeling, and then you can read what's involved in that, metadata standards, focus on DevoZoo maintenance. So DevoZoo is a site that is connected to the DevoWorm group, and it's a site that basically showcases secondary data from different organisms. well, like from C. elegans and from C. sports and all these other organisms, but also artificial life platforms. And so that might be worth checking out. Okay, Jesse said his connection dramatically declined for some reason. That's okay. And then, or, there's another thing in the future we'd like to add semantic capabilities. And there's something called a controlled vocabulary that might be useful there. And so this is, and then the data reuse initiative, which is another initiative that I'm involved with, is, we'd like to provide some application of FAIR principles. And FAIR principles are something I won't get into now, but they're basically a set of standards for open data. The attempt is to make data findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. So there are all sorts of things that entails, from putting it into a secure repository to, adding metadata and descriptions to, making sure that it's replicable so that people, when they grab the data, they can run an analysis and it's the same as the analysis that you ran in your location. So there are all sorts of activities. And Jesse asked me, I think, about orthogonal research, if they were going to be involved in Open Data Day. And I said no, but we did have something in 2018, which was a, let's see if I can find it. I don't think I have a link to it. There was a thing in 2018 that happened. So I proposed in 2018 we work on something called theory building, which is another topic that I'm interested in, but I haven't had the opportunity to. Okay, so this is the Open Data Day 2018. So I have this lecture, Theory Building for Data Science, and it's on Figshare if you're interested in looking at it. And it kind of lays out the argument here. The idea is that data science and even allied fields like machine learning and deep learning don't really have theory involved in them. And so, what is it about theory that's necessary for understanding data, biological data, or, how things work in nature? So there's, we know we have theory in science when we deal with data, but why don't we have theory in those fields? And so this is kind of a description of how, maybe why that's useful and how you might go about doing it. And so the idea, and it never really got off the ground too much. Oh, the slides are here. Okay. Well, the idea never really got off the ground too much. But can we, build on this talk? Can we create tools or maybe other, things that kind of drive this argument forward? And so there's a lot of stuff in this talk, but it basically lays out an approach. And so, one other way people can be involved in Open Data Day is by, this is another thing from 2018, but it's still, I guess, open for contributions. And it's building upon this idea of theory for data science. And so, to answer Jesse's question, yes, there's an opportunity there for contributions. And I think this is actually an interesting area. I haven't really had time to focus on it too much, but I gave this talk and I've put it online, and it's well received. I think people don't really think about it too much. They don't think, especially not in the terms I'm bringing up in this conversation, that they're things, they're tools from say experimental psychology, like a theory of data that people have used in the past. There are things that I propose, like naive theories, topological methods that might actually help us kind of do better at building theories or explainable models for data science. Most data science today is, you put a bunch of data into an algorithm and you pop out some answer, and that's, but there's no real insight there a lot of times. And so the idea is to bring insight into this process. So that's Open Data Day, and it's technically today, but it's like an ongoing thing here. We don't really worry about the day itself. So that's
Yes.
yeah. Okay, so it's past the top of the hour. So thanks for indulging me on that. Any questions about what we're doing?
I had something to say about like our paper has a preprint on this ResearchGate thing, and it's about one by on archive. So thereafter, once we have the preprint and like we have the feedback from people, then we can apply to different journals. Is that right?
Yeah, that's the plan. I wanted to get it out into a forum where people can comment on it and see it, and then we can cite it as a preprint, and then we'll, eventually get it into a journal, and then it'll have its own, it'll have that publication. Usually, the way preprints work is you get different versions of it, and then you get a final version in the journal, and it's still, people are still working out how to deal with that, but it's always beneficial, I think, to have like, to get, maybe to have different versions of it. Like there was one paper we did a couple years ago where we got it into a journal, but we got a preprint on ResearchGate. And the ResearchGate preprint did really well. It had over like 1,000 views, and before it got published. So it's always, and then you can merge this. If people cite it, you can merge the citations on Google Scholar, and it'll show up. So, yeah.
That sounds good.
Yeah.
Fine.
Okay, so thanks for attending this week.
Hey, what?
Oh, go ahead.
Okay.
No, go ahead. I was just going to wrap up.
I was just saying, I accepted the invitation on ResearchGate, and I'm going to update my profile there because I haven't done it in like a year or so. So thank you for doing that, and I'll stay there and more selected.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Have a good week. Talk to you later.
Bye.
Bye.
Take care, everybody. Bye.
All right. Bye.